Hey guys, it's Disco Spider, and before Dreamwork started only making CGI films, they had quite a few hand-drawn animated films. None of them were really all that successful, except for this one, The Prince of Egypt. The Prince of Egypt is based on the story of Exodus from the Bible, and the team behind this movie tried making the film very faithful to the one in the Bible. And since this does talk about religion, the movie could pull some red flags for some, but is this movie told well to the point where you don't need to be a Christian to like this movie, or would this movie be as preachy as, say, VeggieTales? The story is based on Moses, who gets adopted by the royal family of Egypt as a baby and grows up to be the pharaoh of Egypt, until he finds out he was adopted and was part of a family of slaves. Moses then goes out to fulfill God's command of letting his people go. This movie has a really dark tone, but the dark tone works very well for this film. If they made it more sillier, then I don't think this plot would be all that effective. It goes along with the seriousness of the story, and I feel how serious they take all these situations works very well, since there are some heavy, depressing, and traumatizing moments, like a whole lake turning into blood, a storm of locusts, and the terrifying use of slavery, and a whole genocide of babies and firstborn children. This movie does not show any remorse for anyone who wants a lighter movie. Even as a kid, I was terrified of this because of how dark it was. But they work it to its advantage, and that's my favorite part of this film. And as for the story itself, it is told really well, showing us exactly what happened in the story of Exodus clearly without talking down to anyone or not explaining enough to the point where you're confused. And another great part of this film is how they don't overuse the Christian parts in this movie. Something like VeggieTales, where it's way too preachy, and they always bring up God to the point where it turns off anyone who is not a Christian. Right there, you would limit your audience. But in Prince of Egypt, God isn't referenced all that much, and when he is, it is for story purposes and helps the plot and situation. Anyone who isn't a Christian could easily watch this film and could forget that it's about the Bible, unless you're someone who's against any sort of religion except for your own, and don't want to hear or see anything that is remotely related to anything Christian, then go ahead, be like that. And although this movie didn't need to have well-developed, interesting, and likable characters, they still did, for the most part. Our main character, Moses, is such a phenomenal character. He gets so much development in this film. He starts off as a royal who doesn't care much about anything, to someone who now has to save his people from the man he once called his brother. And seeing the shift and struggles from his development and what he has to go through makes you really sympathize for the character. And seeing that even though he is betraying his brother and doing a lot of things to him and his people, like killing his freaking son, he still has remorse and feels really bad for what he's doing. And he's not treated as an amazing guy. Throughout the whole film, everyone hates him, but that also helps us really care for Moses and makes him want him to succeed. And as for Ramesses, he doesn't get as much development as Moses, but he is still an interesting character. I just wish we could have seen more of him having some sort of character development or something. And although he is the villain, you do still feel bad for him that this is happening. And although you do root for Moses, you still don't want Ramesses to lose since he's just following his ancestors and what his father would have wanted. But the bond we see between Moses and Ramesses is just so likable, since they establish that they do really love each other and they're always there for each other. It gets really hard when they have to go against each other, and seeing the broken relationship these two have now is just amazing. And as for the songs, for me it's a mixed bag. There are a few that I don't remember at all and that are just really boring to listen to, but for the ones that I like, I really love them. My favorites would include The Plague, and of course the best song, Deliver Us. The Plague helps build onto the broken relationship between Moses and Ramesses, how torn Moses is about all of this. And Deliver Us brilliantly opens up the film and shows us how tough times were back then as a slave. And a lot of the songs are brilliantly crafted to help darken the tone of this movie. And of course, with Hans Zimmer being in charge of the score, it's gonna be amazing. And it is. But still, even if there are a few that aren't that good, the ones that are good definitely make up for the weaker ones. And as for the negatives I had for this film, it was quite hard to think of some, but I did find one thing that doesn't affect the movie or anything for me, but it's just something that I wish they could have done better to make this movie perfect, which was the relationship between Moses and Zipporah. This was so shoehorned in, and I didn't even realize that they were trying to make them into a couple until she agreed to come with him to help him save his people. They barely spent any time with the character nor the relationship, and she's in quite a lot of the movie, yet she doesn't talk that much or contributes anything. And in the middle of this movie, they do spend some time with her character and where she lives, and I just got really bored with those scenes. And lastly, we have the animation. Yes, it may be surprising to see DreamWorks having a hand-drawn animated film, since they've only had 4 in their timeline, but the animation is still so amazing, and like the songs help the darker tone with showing the struggles of the slaves and how many there are and how much pain they are in. The landscapes and backgrounds are absolutely beautiful, and of course, what also helps deliver Deliver Us being such an amazing song are the visuals that accompanies it, with all the slaves and baby Moses in the water. And this movie also does use some CGI. Now, for the late 90s, it might have been impressive, but nowadays, it's mixed. Sometimes it can look good, and other times it can look noticeably bad. But all in all, The Prince of Egypt is an amazing movie, with a great dark tone, a great story, great main character with a great bond with the antagonist of the films, great songs, and beautiful animation. If you're someone who doesn't have hatred for certain religions, and can enjoy something religious without being overly preachy, then I definitely recommend this film. And if you've seen this as a kid, I definitely say go back and watch it, since this is one of those movies where you gotta be older to really understand the film. Which is ironic, since this would be considered a quote-unquote kids movie. But as much flack as get, especially their older animated films, I still really love them, and especially Prince of Egypt is definitely one of my favorite Dreamworks movies. So yeah, that wraps up everything. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up, and if you want to see more movie reviews, animated movie reviews, older, newer, whatever, do subscribe. So yeah, anyways, I'm the Disco Spider, and peace out.